Hey, before we kick off, this episode wraps up a 5-part series on the most common ways that we unconsciously create friction in our relationship conflicts. Now, most men experience moments where something really small, something like dirty dishes or a crowded grocery run or a date that didn't go quite to plan, turns into a huge blow-up. And this series has been all about helping you understand where you personally can make changes so that stops happening. And if you want to go deeper on your own specific patterns, I put together a free 3-minute assessment to help you get underneath your probably unconscious habits. Now, once you take this assessment, you're going to get real, actionable, and honestly really simple practices that'll help you stay present through your conflicts and avoid unconsciously blowing up something small. The link's in the show notes. Check it out. For today's episode, I want to start by saying this pattern is the only one in the series that's explicitly a known trauma response. Today we're talking about fawning, managing threat by appeasing, prioritizing others, usually our partner's comfort, over our own needs, boundaries, and sense of self. I consider fawning one of the 5 patterns in my disconnection code because it's so incredibly common among men right now that I think it deserves to be included. Yes, it usually lives in a trauma context, but when it becomes ingrained enough, and I think for a lot of guys it has, unconsciously, I think this is what most nice guys are actually doing when things get hard in their relationship. So today, what makes men fawn, how it usually backfires, and what you can do when you know how to catch yourself fawning. Stay with me. This is Reclaiming the Gentle Man. I'm Dave Lashansky. So I've talked a lot on this podcast about nice guys. And you probably know what I mean when I say it, but let's just start there for now. Because most men listening to my work have exhibited nice guy behavior at some point to the detriment of their intimacy. And it's something I really care about helping the men that I work with address. At its heart, choosing niceness usually comes down to one of 3 beliefs. That your needs don't matter as much as other people's, that your emotions are not acceptable, or that you're going to lose love if you choose honesty. Now, those are all pretty painful beliefs. And men who fawn, those of us who go nice and push our own needs aside to avoid conflict, need to look directly at those beliefs if we want to get our agency back, especially in relationship. And here's something I don't think gets enough attention. That's at the heart of this fawning tendency that we need to start looking at if we want to change our relationships. And this is like a societal level issue that I'm talking about. Because most adult men, especially millennial men, grew up inside a cultural moment that was doing something really significant to boys that we haven't fully reckoned with. Most of us grew up in a time when being homophobic wasn't socially acceptable, which is a good thing, obviously. But the fear of being labeled gay in male friendships was still very much alive. And if you ask most straight adult men whether that fear existed in their friend groups growing up, most of us would say yes. It was a diss to be called gay. It was a litmus test, and it taught boys that certain kinds of closeness, especially with each other, certain kinds of softness, were actually dangerous. And most of us also grew up watching the women around us, our mothers, our sisters, our teachers, fight to be seen as more than wives and mothers, as more than what women were traditionally seen to be. Fight to be seen as equal to men, equally capable, equally strong. And many of us became allies endorsing that But if you ask honestly, for most men that bought in, that became allies to that movement, you'll realize that it didn't really come from fully understanding the messaging. It came from watching how much it mattered to the women we loved, from feeling how important it was to them that we stopped seeing men and women as different. Our allyship didn't come from genuinely understanding what it meant to make space and own our privilege and give up where we can. It came from seeing how important it was to the women in our lives. And I think those two things, the suppression of male closeness and the outsourcing of our emotional compass to the women around us, created something in a lot of men that is wrecking our relationships. Again, it's not that the changes we made as a society were harmful. Don't get me wrong. The thing is that those changes and the way they happened, the way we imbibed them and moved through them, cost men something really important. And every relationship with a man that fawns when he needs to have better boundaries, when he needs better self-awareness and better self-respect, is seeing these changes and the problems they built inside of him play out. Because what happened is that men that grew up through this time, starting, I guess, in the 80s, but really ramping up like crazy in the 90s and beyond, men who were raised during those times, those men, myself included, became incredibly attuned to the emotions of the people around us, especially the women. And I'm generalizing, obviously, but this is for the guys or the women who realize that fawning is affecting their relationship. Because what happened was we learned that managing other people's emotions was the most effective way to keep the peace, to avoid losing people, to feel safe, to feel like we're in control. And somewhere in there, we lost the ability to understand and articulate and act in service of what we're actually needing and feeling and wanting ourselves in the moment. Because reading the room and responding to everyone else's emotions is a full-time job if you need it in order to feel safe. And that will work really well for you until it doesn't. That's fawning. That's what all of this episode is about today. So let's ground this. What does it look like in practice? Let's say you get home from a long day and you see she's in a mood. You walk in the door and you can feel it before she even says anything. And immediately she just starts in on you. So I booked our trip for us because you forgot. Why do you always forget? I can't believe you're such a loser. Right? She's worked up. And inside, your heart is racing, your stomach is in your chest, and all you can think is, how do I make this stop? And your first instinct is, okay, I know I need to be accountable, so I think, okay, well, fair enough, I did drop the ball on that. And you apologize over and over. You tell her she's right. You start listing your failures. You start giving evidence against yourself, right? You ask what you can do, and you mean all of it. At least you think you do. And the problem was that you weren't really in the room with her. The moment you realized she was upset, your only focus became making it stop. Not connecting with her, not being honest, just making it stop. Making her love you again. That's fawning. And the cruelest part is that it looks so similar to accountability in practice sometimes. It looks like humility from the outside. It can feel like you're taking responsibility, but if you're only doing it to get back in control of the emotional climate, it just is not going to work. She's not going to feel loved by it. She's going to feel alone in it. And the worst part is that you're going to start to hate yourself for this. Fawning will mess you up. But I think it's important that we zero in on the difference between fawning and accountability so that you can come away from this episode really knowing how to act in that moment. And I actually hinted at it just now because the difference between fawning and accountability isn't what you do. It's about what's driving it inside you. Accountability says, I hurt you and I want to repair that. Fawning says, you're upset and I need that to stop. One is about your relationship, about you being a present party in it and you caring. And the other is about avoiding discomfort. You could be using the exact same words. You could be in the exact same posture, but she's going to feel the difference. So are you. Because when you're fawning, you're not actually there. You are managing her emotions, the room, the situation, and she's not looking for a manager. She's looking for someone to meet her. And especially if you're with someone who can be really biting, who can just kind of dive right in the way that we did in that example, right? She's probably testing whether you're up to it, whether you're going to stand up for yourself, waiting for you to have the courage to care enough about yourself to not let her do that too. And while, yes, her frustration can point you toward where you need to grow, it can't be your motivation to do it. And if you're with someone who is constantly testing whether you're up to it, first of all, you need to decide if this is a relationship you want to be in. But second of all, you need to recognize what it is calling you toward. A level of self-respect where getting back to normal is less the goal than being in a loving relationship. And if you're using her frustration to point you where you need to grow, you've got to know that it can't be the motivation, right? That need to grow, that desire to grow in your relationship has to come from you. It has to come from a place of deciding that you are worth more than the version of yourself that disappears the moment things get hard. That you're worth more than avoiding asserting your boundaries from the person you love. It has to come from knowing you are worthy of love even when you make mistakes. That's where change comes from. That's where change begins. But if you're waiting for her frustration to wake you up to that part of you, that version of you that'll choose growth, you are making her your boss. You're making her do the work, and you're manipulating her into changing you instead of being courageous enough to do it yourself. And I know that can sound harsh. I know it can be incredibly difficult if you're in this situation and you have a tendency to fawn, but you need to know something inside of you is waiting for her to push you into a version of you that you need to be responsible for, that you need to see is possible and that you want for yourself. Because here's the thing I really want you to hear, especially if what I'm saying here mirrors any part of your relationship. You will be called to stand in a storm that feels way too intense, that will make you question your relationship and whether you're in the right one. You will have to confront the question of whether this person in front of you is someone whose imperfections you can accept. Because I think a lot of women these days are also struggling in exactly the ways that will complement what so many men are trying to grow into. But if you're being tested, if your relationship struggles are making you fawn and you don't know how to navigate those moments, this is your opportunity to turn fawning into real accountability. To wake up, first and foremost, to what it means to be the man you want to be. To be accountable to that version of you. First to you, and then to her. This is your opportunity to learn to stand in the storm and feel the weight of her emotions and the intensity of them without needing them to change. In fact, not needing anything from her in that moment because you know you will not abandon yourself and that you can be accountable for your impact at the same time. This is what it takes to learn to apologize without it needing to fix everything. to change yourself because it's aligned with who you want to be in your relationship, in your life, not because it's who she needs you to be. That's the difference. That's what fawning doesn't allow you to do. Because when you're so attached to changing the way she feels and changing the situation, you are going to fail to lead it. You won't be able to own it. And you'll never be real and honest and present inside of it. And really, that's the lesson, right? That lesson is the magic of relationships for most of us these days. It is opening up to who we really are and how much more we're capable of than we thought we were. And doing that because we are choosing it, not because it's easy. If you want to know if fawning is one of your primary patterns, you can go to the free assessment in the show notes, your-reconnection-code.lovable.app. Again, the link is in the show notes. Check it out. It's free and it will help you. It will give you actual tools to use in the moment and that we all need to learn to see and change when we realize it's happening for us in our relationships. Again, that link is in the show notes. Check it out. It's only 3 minutes and it's already helping men discover the patterns they might not be able to see themselves already. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Reclaiming the Gentle Man. Wherever this finds you, wishing you a beautiful day or night. I'll be back in a week.